Yes, Bertha, Clarence, and Jacob Zucker. Okay. We get. Were you at the show on Sunday? We still have people outside too. Sorry we have so many chairs and they're so close together. We had a big speaker here today. But you can hear him next week. So while we're waiting for other folks to come in, let me just give you a little rundown of what's coming up. Next week, where is it? It's Saeed Khan will be here next week. And obviously we want to create a nice big audience for him. He's always so generous with his time. I know some of you might have heard him today at SOAR. He does get around, but he hasn't spoken here since long before the pandemic. So we're very excited about that. He's coming next week. And then, though it's Shavuot, and I know that you all do celebrate Shavuot in the most traditional of manners, you're going to have to eat your cheesecake and your ice cream without me, because we're taking off because it's multiple Memorial Day weekend, and because Shavuot's really never been that big an attraction to humanistic Jews anyway. But if you do want to reenact standing at the foot of Sinai, all the other synagogues will be happy to accommodate you. Yes? There are Friday services next week. We're taking 1 week off for Memorial Day weekend. And then I will be gone, and I will leave you in the very capable hands for 2 weeks of Melanie Goldberg, who will be speaking about the first of those two, which I think is June. It's not on my calendar here because this only went through May. June 2nd, she'll be speaking about what we can learn from that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which won all the Academy Awards. And the second Friday, which is the 9th, she'll be speaking about Harry Belafonte and Harry Kushner, Rabbi Harold Kushner, and which the two of them, you may not realize, had a lot in common in the sense of their commitment to social justice and peace activism. So thank you for sitting in for me, or standing in for me, Melanie, during that time. In the meantime, we have lots of other programs. You can check this sheet out. Everything's online. Everything's on the newsletter. We have no shortage of information. And even though we don't put it in the U.S. mail anymore, and you wouldn't get it anyway if we did, we do have it there online for you. All right, we're going to learn a new song. Arthur, I'm going to ask you to advance quickly to number 4. We have been introducing new songs, which really are old songs, at a very rapid rate over the last year or so, thanks to Joseph's willingness to learn them. And
so we need some new songs.
Right, we needed new songs. There you no, number 4. Number 4. No, hold on. Oh my goodness. Is this the right service? It's not April 14th.
Everybody, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.
Anybody know a good divorce attorney? I'm kidding. He's a volunteer. You can't fire a volunteer when he's your husband. This is the song. You already know the other song. So my phone is off. We double and triple checked it. We did. We did. All right, if the heckling is done and the big mistakes are done, but this is the beauty of our congregation, that we have this lightheartedness. We also have this new song. This is actually a very old song, a very traditional song that I was inspired by the music to adapt it from Psalm 95. It really talks about worshiping God and being thankful to God and a lot of God. So instead, we're going to talk about Shabbat. So let me go through the words very quickly. You'll just repeat them after me, and then we'll sing it now, and then we'll sing it when we get there. Lechu naranana.
Lechu naranana.
La Shabbat.
La Shabbat.
Naria.
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 Liyom simchatenu.
Liyom simchatenu.
Nikadma.
Nikadma.
Bishalom.
Bishalom.
And then the next part is Naria, Naria.
Ria Naria,
Liyom Simchatenu,
Al Yom Simchatenu,
Bizmirot
Bismirot,
Naria Lo.
Naria Lo.
So this is my attempt to translate into biblical Hebrew, ancient worship of God. This song maybe is, in its original, maybe as old as 2,600 years old. But not this version, which means let us sing joyfully, not to honor our Creator, but to honor Shabbat. Let us elevate our day of joy, greeting it in peace, celebrating it with songs. So let's try it once, and then we'll sing it again when we come around to it. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena la Shabbat. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena la Shabbat. Naria, Naria, leyom simchatenu, nekadma v'shalom. Naria, Naria, leyom simchatenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena la Shabbat. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena la Shabbat. Naria, Naria, leyom simchatenu, nekadma v'shalom. Naria, Naria, leyom simchatenu, bizmirot naria lo. And we'll do it a little bit faster when we get to it, but we are going to get to it because we're going to start our service with slide number 1. Okay. These candles that stand before us waiting to be kindled, we take this moment to recall our ancestors. Like them, we seek on Shabbat to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes, our communities, and our lives. May our Shabbat lights inspire us to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to praise and not to curse. May the dancing flames of the candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, and passion to our lives. I'd like to invite Gail and Mike Whitty to light our Shabbat candles.
Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor ba'shalom, ba'shalom, Baruch haor, Baruch haor, ba'shabbat.
Our readers tonight are Edna Fryer, Lonnie Fleischer, Natan Fuchs, Susie Friedman, Beth DeZoden Fuchs, David Finkel, and John Arking. And we'll begin with Edna.
Hello, everybody. May these moments of Shabbat, rest, renewal, and contemplation inspire us to open our hearts and minds to inspiring and comforting each other. May all who struggle find rest, and
May all who suffer find solace.
may all who hurt find healing.
May all who despair find purpose.
May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day.
And may every one of us be inspired to fulfill its promise.
Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, nekadma v'shalom. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, bismiro naria lo. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, nekadma v'shalom. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, bismiro naria lo.
Or nismachto.
Shabbat Shalom. We've got a great crowd tonight. It's good to see you all. As we welcome Shabbat, let us look to this moment in time to once again gain perspective on where we have been and where we are going. On this Shabbat, may we find the space to consider and to challenge. May we find the courage to do what is right. Together, let us find meaning, calm our anxieties, understand our purpose, and appreciate our accomplishments. Let us find the strength to continue working for ourselves and others. Let us share the burdens and blessings of responsibility. Let us locate the will to change the things we can no longer accept. Let us do all of this and more, mindful that we are a community of humanistic Jewish believers, unbroken and unbowed, prepared to face all that life has in store for us. Let us strive to feel these bonds of belief and community when we're together and when we are apart. Let us rejoice in our ties. Let us rejoice in our collective power. Let us rejoice in the gift of Shabbat.
Mishkenoteka Yisrael Likrat Shabbat Lechu v'necha Lechu v'necha Ki mekor habracha Mekor habracha Mishkenoteka Yisrael Ma tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenoteka
Shabbat Shalom. May we strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. These words we inscribe in our innermost being, aspiring to practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that the next generation may learn to revere and celebrate life.
Tikvati eifo kochi bi vegam bach eifo kochi bi vegam bach. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me. And in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me. And in you, and in you.
The transforming power of love, the redeeming power of compassion, the healing power of forgiveness, these endure in every age. The joy which comes from sharing, the strength which comes from striving, the nourishment which comes from nature, these endure in every age. The sanctity of life, the value of truth, the primacy of justice, these endure in every age. Amidst never-ending change, may we have the wisdom to know and to cherish those teachings which endure for all time.
Niftach lanu sha'arei tzedek ein v'chesed v'rachamim. Niftach lanu sha'arei tzedek ein v'chesed v'rachamim. Shalom, niftach lanu v'navovam. Shalom, niftach lanu v'navovam. Niftach lanu sha'arei tzedek v'chesed v'rachamim. Niftach lanu sha'arei tzedek v'chesed v'rachamim.
When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when, to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness. Right. Then goodness encompasses our lives, and we can begin to change the world.
על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם קיים. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם קיים. על האמת ועל הדין ועל השלום, על האמת ועל הדין ועל השלום, על שלושה דברים, 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 העולם קיים. על שלושה דברים, 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 העולם קיים.
Don't merely expect to find or to believe that life is worthwhile. Make it worthwhile. Don't merely see life whole, make it whole. Not knowing which should come first, to improve oneself or to improve the world, we end up doing neither. Actually, the only way to improve the world is by improving oneself, and the only way to improve oneself is by improving the world.
Shabbat Shalom. The downfall of the attempts of governments and leaders to unite humanity is found in this: the message that we should see everyone as the same. This is the root of the failure of harmony, because the truth is we should not see everyone as the same. We are not the same. We are made of different colors and we have different cultures. We are all different. The key to this door is to look at these differences, respect these differences, learn from and about these differences, and grow in and with these differences. In the quest for unity and peace, we cannot blind ourselves and expect all of us to be the same. We are not on a journey to become the same or to be the same as all others. We are on a journey to see that it is our differences that make us beautiful as a human race, our differences that will help us grow and learn.
Na'aseh shalom, shalom ba'olam. shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru shalom.
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, our well wishes are extended to these members of our community and their loved ones, to Ruthie Goldman, Ruth Moltz, Rabbi Peter Schweitzer, and Jim Walker. If there's someone whom you're thinking about whose name you'd like to add to that list as we go around the room, anyone on this side? No? Anybody here, up there? Anybody over here? It's my favorite thing when nobody has any names to add to the list. May all who suffer know that we are not alone, that they are not alone, that we are there. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits.
Mekom hakoach betochenu, mekorot habracha mi'efroteinu. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say shalom. Mekom hakoach betochenu, mekorot habracha mi'efroteinu. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say shalom. At times of loss, we may look through books for the perfect words to give form to our feelings, make the thing complete, set the matter at rest. But in hours of searching, each piece lies rejected, too precise, too difficult, too harsh, not relevant, implying what we do not wish. But look into the gray wide sky and the thoughts will come like this. Remember me when I loved you most and you loved me most. Remember me when I was my bravest and when I did you right. Then let that be our secret bond. And just once, let us rise in the morning and enjoy the light and know that that bird in the mist is returning to the sun. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us. Our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. Recalling now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, we observe the yahrzeits of these members and loved ones and friends of members of our congregation. Robert Arking, Celia de Zoden, Robert Ellis, Asher J. Finkel, Morton Fryer, Sonia Haas, Max Halpern, Mark Jarris, Clara Roman, Rose Bonnie Jarris, Dr. Lawrence Klein, Harold Malinsky, Bertha Zucker, Clarence Zucker, and Jacob Zucker. If there's someone whom you're remembering, as we did earlier for those who are ill, please feel free to share their names. David.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side or over here? Yes. Thank you. If you can do so comfortably in their memory, as we meditate on their memories and their lives and the blessing they bring us, we recite together the humanistic interpretation of Kaddish. Nit gadal v'nit kadash beruach ha'adam. Let us dignify and ennoble all people in the spirit of our shared humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind. May justice and peace permeate and comfort the house of Israel and all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. Please be seated. And as you are seated, all joking aside, and I get frustrated as we all do with our spouses, but I love that band dearly. And I want you to know how much I appreciate you and publicly say that, even when we get little things wrong. I apologize. You know, it's no easy task living with me. I'm a real pain in the butt. I know I don't show it to you guys often enough. Maybe I should, but but he's a patient, wonderful man, and you should see what a great, wonderful grandfather he is too. He's 80. All right, moving over to less pleasant matters, such as what's happening in our nation and this culture war. So how many of you thought of this question? Are you woke? Somebody came in tonight and said to me, I'm proudly woke. Back in March, a USA Today Ipsos poll asked Americans these questions and more about the meaning of woke. Excuse me. I realize my eyes aren't working either. You know, I did not need 3 pairs of glasses when I got here 10 years ago. 10 years. There we go. Oh, look at that. Words on the page. I don't have to make it up as I go along. The questions they asked in that poll, which we'll return to at the end, are, do you consider being woke a compliment or an insult? What do you think the word woke even means? What does wokeness signal to you? For a word that's entered the splintered American political scene and our lexicon at the speed of light, it should come as no surprise that we Americans are divided. We can't even define the word. We are arguing about, in some cases, legislating things we don't even understand. Welcome to America 2023. Let's start, and I know I promised I'd be brief, but I'm not so sure I'm ever going to be capable of doing that. But I'll try. You can probably venture an educated guess that the term woke itself has roots in African American vernacular English. And if you did, you'd be right. But it actually goes back much further than you'd imagine. It was first used in the early 20th century to indicate that someone was aware or alert. Then, as now, Black Americans used it to indicate that someone had a kind of enlightened awareness of social and political issues affecting many communities, particularly their own. To be woke means recognizing systemic racism, which means, of course, racist policies and practices built into the systems of government, of finance, our social structure, and so forth. It means advocating for equality before the law in housing and education and labor. Yet even as the civil rights movement has grown and realized monumental, though certainly not sufficient, achievements, the word kind of disappeared. It took another century, and social media, of course, before it returned. I first heard it 10 years ago in a news report about Black Twitter, the corner where Black activists gather to talk about things. I don't know if it's still there anymore since our friend Musk made that place even worse than it was. It was a way of people from Black civil rights organizations and other civil rights causes to encourage each other by saying, stay woke, stay alert, stay aware. And its usage, of course, grew in the context of the growth of Black Lives Matter and that movement, larger social justice movements that have emerged since then, especially since the murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, 9 years ago, which crescendoed, but far from disappeared, with the murder of George Floyd. I'm glad to see some justice has been taken there in Minnesota. I recall first thinking of myself as woke a little bit, and in this context, though it's not the word I would use, after I made a trip to the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. How many of you have been there? Oh, too few, because it is magnificent. And there, I was exposed, of course, to much of the traditional history of Black Americans, but also to areas of their lives and what they struggled through that I never imagined, that had not been taught to me in school. Some of them so beautiful, the amazing contributions, only some of which we're generally aware of, that Black Americans have made to our general culture here, but of course much of it ugly too, including many, many things that I did not learn in school. This led me to seek out books like Ta-Nehisi Coates's Between the World and Me and Isabel Wilkerson's Caste, both of which I reviewed here in years past. They laid a little bit of a groundwork for an elementary, and I do mean elementary, understanding for me of what we call critical race theory, CRT. Now, CRT has been around for a long time, some 50 years, and that did not readily enter the vocabulary of most Americans. Most can't really define it at all. Most others simply misunderstand it. According to the most anodyne definition I could find, and that would be Wikipedia, as always, critical race theory is a cross-disciplinary examination by social and civil rights scholars and activists of how laws, social and political movements, media, are shaped by social conceptions of race and ethnicity. The word critical, of course, means the academic type of critical thinking, critical theory, scholarly criticism, not criticizing or blaming people, as too many have deduced from their lack of ability to clearly understand the English language or to respect what scholars have been doing for a long time. It's used in sociology. It explains social, political, and legal structures and power distribution through a lens that focuses on the concept of race and the experiences of racism. You know, humanist thinkers have been talking and writing about this kind of thing for years. I was surprised to find in sermons that I gave 10 years ago things that today would be considered critical race theory. Now, admittedly, there are parts of what critical race theory uncovers that are difficult for many people to hear. Doesn't mean they're untrue, it simply means that they spark emotions and feelings. And because we still live in a highly divided nation, and we know that we're surrounded by people whose level of ignorance about issues of race has actually grown, we're dealing with all kinds of criticism of the other kind that we never expected to have to face about a mere legal theory. Recently, I noticed an argument, and I'm sure you guys have seen them before, about whether the Civil War was over slavery or not. How many of you think that's the most ridiculous question you've ever heard? Yeah, I'm one of them. You only need to look at Texas's Declaration of Secession. Listen to this. We hold as undeniable truths that the governments of the various states and of the Confederacy itself were established exclusively by the white race for themselves and their prosperity, that the African race had no agency in their establishment, that they were rightfully held and regarded as an inferior and dependent race, and in that condition only could their existence in this country be rendered beneficial or tolerable. Texas alone would go on to claim that slavery was the reason for secession in its own articles another 21 times. But guess what? Teaching that kind of stuff, that doesn't go well down in Texas or in Florida. And I should know, because I was educated in both of those states. Though we must sadly admit that there are places, too, all over the country where people wave the Confederate flag with ignorant and comforting confidence in the claims that it's all just a celebration of Southern heritage. Although how they get away with that in Michigan I really still don't understand it. In any case, it is to my home state of Florida, I am, as many of you know, a fourth-generation Floridian, that I now wish to turn. We're going to spend some time there, and not in the happy place of Florida. Because it's there, of course, that Governor Ron DeSantis has initiated his war on woke. That's what he calls it. One that has set the tone for so much of the nation in our divisiveness, what some would call our debate. Legislatively, his efforts began with the demonization of CRT. That's why I began with it. With coming up with laws and regulations aimed at reducing the alleged discomfort. I suppose that's what he thinks the criticism is. Though the man went to Yale and Harvard, you'd think he'd understand better. But these laws meant to address the alleged discomfort, let's say, that children, but now even university students, might feel when confronted with systemic racism in our country. It's no coincidence that they focused on education. Much of the war on woke is taking place in the name of so-called parents' rights. As DeSantis has demonstrated, no cultural war is more powerful than one that is riding on the angry demands of parents like those we call Moms for Liberty. Have you heard of this group? I hope they're gone by the time you got to get there. You got a few years, so maybe. Their definition of liberty seems to mean banning or restricting things that they don't like to hear about. Just yesterday, we learned that Florida initially rejected over 80% of the new K-12 social studies materials that the publishers had submitted. Among those rejections were removals of historical references to the Hebrew Bible's social justice issues. Why? Because apparently calling something social justice is considered politically charged language. That's something that I, as a student of the Bible, find really galling. It's one of the good parts, actually. And there's parts of the Bible that are good, and the social justice stuff were among them. They removed any references to, for instance, to why people are kneeling during the U.S. national anthem to protest police brutality. Not endorsements, mind you, just mentions that this is happening. Heaven forfend that these kids should learn that there are people who are not happy with how things are in this country. They removed descriptions of democratic socialism, as mild could be, because they misrepresented socialism. They removed an entire section describing, again, not endorsing, the rise of Black Lives Matter in the last 20 years, the murder of George Floyd and others, pretty much everything related to the current civil rights protests. As one critic put it, DeSantis and extreme MAGA Republicans, and I'm sorry, that's what's happened to that party, are bent on dumbing down America's education system and silencing black voices. And as all of this is happening, the war on woke has expanded beyond race to other minorities, prominently including, but not limited to, LGBTQ people. Children, once again, are the excuse. Can't we please save the children? Their battle cry. By the way, that was also the slogan in the late 1970s of the Miami ban. I lived through this, of the Miami ban on allowing gay people, known gay people, professed homosexuals as they used to call them, to teach in public schools. I cannot tell you the damage that that did to me as a 15-year-old. It probably was the reason I stayed in the closet for another several decades. In Florida, again, which is leading the nation, the current round of LGBTQ attacks began with what opponents have called the Don't Say Gay law. It was just a little over a year ago that Governor DeSantis signed that bill into law. A law that forbids, this is a quote, forbids instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through third grade. And by instruction, they mean any mention of it whatsoever, acknowledging that it exists. Critics of the bill, with whom, of course, I agree, have been proven correct over the last year about the ways that it would be applied. They correctly noted the chilling effect that would arise due to its intentionally vague language. Everybody's scared to do anything around any of these issues now. It's a chill that's left teachers afraid to signal to their students even the most mild acknowledgement of the mere existence of same-sex couples, of families that they may have, families that many of the children in the classroom, at least some of them, belong to. Even having a family picture on a teacher's desk, if it's the wrong kind of family, has been grounds for complaints by these Moms for Liberty to go after schools claiming violations of the law. This constant parental haranguing has opened up school districts to costly and frivolous litigation from those seeking to exclude LGBTQ people at any grade level, and it is now every grade level, and universities too, because the law was expanded just a few weeks ago to address all of those areas of education. Mentions of sexual orientation, of gender studies, of gender identity, quickly becoming banned. As expected, some of the largest battles in the war of woke, from Florida to Michigan, from New York to California, have been taking place over school and public libraries. And the Moms for Liberty, they are achieving their goals, which seems to be to refer to liberty, which seems to be to find the liberty and enjoy the liberty to rob others of their own free choice of literature. Groups like this have banned such books as, I'm just going to give you a few, a cute little children's book called Entango Makes Three. It's a book about a baby penguin and its two dads. That's a real thing, by the way, in nature. I don't know if you knew that. The Truth About Alice, a book about bullying. Mouse, Art Spiegelman's great graphic novel about the Holocaust. Lots of Holocaust materials have been withdrawn from the libraries. A book called It's Perfectly Normal, Changing Bodies, Growing Up, Sex and Sexual Health, an important resource for almost 30 years now in school libraries. 19 Minutes, a book about the trauma of a school shooting, because apparently kids are not allowed to read about school shootings between their active shooter drills. My grandson went through one of these drills recently. He was very, very traumatized by it. Fun Home, a graphic novel about a young gay woman made into a Broadway play, an award-winning Broadway play. Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, Toni Morrison's Beloved, even The Diary of Anne Frank. We've heard them all. There are so many. A lot of them are about gay topics. Many of them are about race. Many are just about normal things that people talk about that the liberty crowd doesn't want children or young people to be aware of. And this, of course, just a tiny, tiny little sample. These attitudes exist very, very much so here in Michigan, sadly. A couple of weeks ago, State Senators Rosemary Baer and Jeremy Moss, who will be with us later in the summer, shared in this room how a boring resolution to honor libraries and librarians, you know, just one of those things they do every day in Lansing, was rejected along party lines. Can you imagine? And I'm sure most of you have heard about Jamestown Township, that's in Ottawa County in West Michigan, and how they closed their only library by rejecting the millage for it by a vote of 56 to 44% after vastly overstated claims made by some angry parents about the library's tiny collection of LGBTQ literature. We saw it in Dearborn. I have to say it was very, very especially disappointing there. Among the LGBT community, it is the people represented by the T, transgender people, one of the tiniest and most vulnerable of minorities in our country, who are taking the brunt of this, as Florida-style legislation and policies are sweeping the nation, gaining new targets along the way. In addition to attacks on and legislation against medical care, affirming gender care for trans youth, and in some cases even for adults, legislatures have been wasting time on banning drag shows, drag queen story hours, claiming that the kind of entertainment that they offer is somehow a mask for grooming children into homosexuality. I'm so tired of this all these decades later. The cynicism behind claims of protecting the children, by the way, is just outlandish. Jon Stewart recently did a special about guns. And in that special, I guess he's got a series now, I suppose, on Apple TV. He interviewed an Oklahoma state senator, a guy named Nathan Dahm, who himself has led the charge for anti-drag legislation to protect the children. I'm just going to read you a little bit from the interview. Stewart asked him, you want to ban drag show readings to children? He said, to minors, yes. Stewart then continued, why? Why? What are you protecting? Aren't you infringing on that performer's free speech? Dahm replied, they can continue to exercise free speech, just not in front of a child. Again, Stewart asked, why? And Dahm replied, because the government does have a responsibility to protect children. To which Stewart countered with a question. Senator, he said, what's the leading cause of death amongst children in the country? I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children. So what is it? And Dahm replied, a little bit exasperated he was, I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms. And Stewart said, no, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying, and I'll just bleep it, to stop that, because that shall not be infringed. That, Senator, is hypocrisy at its highest order, and I could not agree more. There are, of course, people who are fighting back against this war on woke. I was so happy to see Mike and Gail here because they were the ones who brought me the news of what happened in Royal Oak. I knew it was going on, but I was busy that day. It was the day of our fundraiser when a new and quite popular little bookstore, you should go visit it, it's called Sidetracks, right on Washington, near the tracks, decided to host an innocuous drag queen story hours. The whole shtick is that they dress up like characters in the books, right? It's fun. Well, sorry, pages got stuck together here. This, of course, triggered an anti-woke group called the Grand New Party, which quickly sprung to action with calls for a mass protest. Only 10 whole protesters, however, showed up to decry the grooming of youngsters. This is the Save Our Children inspired cry, of course. Standing against those 10 narrow-minded people were well over 1,000. And that, by the way, is, I think, an underestimate, but that's what the police said it was. I couldn't believe those pictures. Arthur and I didn't go. I think I just mentioned that, right? We just lived blocks away, but we had something else going on. So we weren't there. We didn't even need to be there. That's the best thing, by the way, of having people who are allies, that we don't have to show up to everything. And I want to thank you and all the other folks who went or were there in spirit. And it does remind us that there is a good element willing to fight back against the anti-woke. And by the way, I went to their Facebook page and I found no shortage of vitriolic Jew hatred. Make no mistake, where this stuff pops up, the Jew haters, the anti-Semitism is always there. Supporters of this anti-wokeism like to claim that they're just normal conservatives. They just oppose the way that wokeism curtails free speech, that they find in wokeism just another kind of divisive identity politics. They don't like identity politics. It's harmful to society as a whole. It's what perpetuates division and animosity. You know, those woke people are so overly sensitive. They put too much effort into accommodating these little groups. And they create a culture of cancellation. You've heard that, cancel culture, right? That makes it harder for people to engage in robust debate. After all, that's all that these people want. That's all that they're asking for, is just a robust disagreement. I would respond that these are possibly the worst and most hypocritical arguments that they could possibly have chosen. Woke people are curtailing free speech. I refer you back just 5 minutes to the book bans that we've been talking about, even in universities where CRT is now not to be discussed. Wokeness is just divisive identity politics? Well, next week we're going to hear a little bit more about Christian nationalism, something you know I've been talking about a lot, from Saeed Khan, but I think we all know that there is no stronger identity politics and none more divisive than that which is being pursued by Christian nationalists. Its entire agenda is to place emphasis on Christian identity and Christian cultural values of a certain type, to conflate Christianity with nationalism, to promote the idea that the United States is a Christian nation, that its laws and policies should reflect their identity. They argue that American identity and the country's laws and institutions should be aligned with their interpretation of what Christianity is, opposing abortion, promoting traditional gender roles, advocating for Christian symbols and practices to take precedence in the public square. If we want to talk about identity politics in this country, and I don't know why this does not come up more in the media, this is the dangerous identity politics. Not what is your pronoun. That is not where the dangers lie. This is where the danger lies. Worse than identity politics that protect marginalized people, because those people are not seeking to dominate any group at the expense of any others. And finally, what about the claims that wokeness is the source of cancel culture? That wokeness shuts people up, that it makes it harder when you're woke to listen to robust disagreement and consider well-balanced arguments. Well, let me refer you, out of the hundreds of examples I had, I took the most recent, the Bud Light panic boycott of 2023, spurred by a partnership that the company made with a trans woman named Dylan Mulvaney back in March. It was one of dozens that they made this promotion with about the March Madness basketball games. I don't have time to elaborate it. If you don't know what ridiculousness has ensued, beginning, of course, always Kid Rock. If it's not the politicians, always Kid Rock. But go Google it. You'll laugh for hours. When you're not laughing, you'll cry. Oh, and then there's the attempted cancellation. I have to say, the cancellation to top all cancellations in recent times by DeSantis of the Walt Disney Corporation. I still await, and I invite anyone who can provide me with a conservative, balanced, ideological explanation behind the decision to attack, in rhetoric and law, your state's largest private corporate employer. The entire reason that you can bring people down there and not have them pay income tax is because of the Walt Disney Corporation. Didn't they fight for freedom of speech for corporations? Wasn't that a conservative goal? Isn't that what Citizens United was all about? There is no principled conservative argument for this. In fact, though, there is principled opposition among brave conservatives. There still are such people. I know it's hard to hear them. I have found that I agree with them more times than not because of the civility that they bring to the table. I speak about people with whom I have had many disagreements with over the years. People like David French, an illustrious and very much admired conservative thinker, until, of course, he said no to MAGA and no to authoritarianism. A writer for the National Review, a former fellow at the National Review, who has pointed out the brazenness of DeSantis's and his supporters' attacks on Disney for what he describes, this is his language, mild opposition, mainly consisting of a brief public statement and a phone call, that subsequently resulted in the state of Florida targeting Disney because of the company's, as he believes, constitutionally protected expression. And lest anyone think that we're just inferring this wasn't really what DeSantis had in mind. Well, in his own book, just recently released, which I'm sure he himself will buy tens of thousands of copies of, he brags about how he rapidly mobilized the state legislature to specifically target Disney because of the company's, quote, support of indoctrinating young school children in woke gender identity politics. Look, the Walt Disney Company has been indoctrinating children for a long time. All of you, going back to my mother and earlier. But their woke agenda, other than the occasional portrayal of maybe a guy who likes another guy a little bit too chummily, it's not that serious. But not according to Disney. And I'm sorry, not according to DeSantis. David French wrote that if Disney loses, America's first liberty, our freedom of expression, will be at risk, and the culture wars will escalate out of control. Now, I have to say, on that point alone, I have to say I do disagree with Mr. French. The culture wars are already out of control. And it's because of these people, because they've created them, because they exploit them for political power. There is no reason this country should be this disunited. It is being manufactured, and it is hurting people, as most of these kinds of things do. When I began, I talked about the USA Today Ipsos poll. The results were mildly disturbing and also in some ways encouraging. On the disturbing side, Americans, as I've said, are divided on whether woke is a compliment or an insult. But there are wide disparities, and a lot of them are based upon age. And as we know, not that I'm wishing any one generation to disappear, but such is the normal course of life, that younger generations come along with their values. Fortunately, many of them having been educated by wonderful people like us, like you. On the positive side, a majority of people are starting to understand that wokeness does indeed mean what we say it means. It means being informed of social injustices, being informed and educated and aware of what the importance is of dignity. That when DeSantis describes Florida as the place where woke goes to die, that's not an adult or mature statement. That's a statement of an autocrat. And one last point for this evening, it's important to note that even as their attacks seem to increase, their proponents demonstrate more and more difficulty articulating what it is, other than hate, that they actually believe in. CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, devoted its entire agenda a few months ago to the war on woke. Attendees were asked by visiting journalists what they meant by woke. It's a typical answer, but one that was offered by a panelist. That's tough. Let me think on it. Give me like 2 minutes to come up with something good. That's a panelist. An entire political movement is being based on something that they cannot politely define. Because, of course, if you allow them to impolitely and explicitly define it, it's hatred. To exploit people's anger, their disenchantment, their fears of the future, and to gain power and lucre. Allow me and those young people who replied the poll, and I know all of you, to remind ourselves that what woke really means is honoring the strength of diversity, as we read in that one piece reading this evening. It means believing that the government should protect free speech and free expression and free religion, but above all, being woke is shorthand for being aware of the need to dignify and honor all the facets of humanity and the self-identities of all people. I have to tell you, I don't really use the word woke about myself very much, but it's only because I already have a word that covers my allegiance to those values. I call it humanism. Thank you guys very much. It's always hard when that cough enters right as you're finishing up the talk. All right, we have this beautiful song that really is about coming together.
Behold how good it is when people dwell together, living as one people, hand in hand. What keeps us safe and strong is that we have each other, one human family across the land. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim כולם יחד.
As always, thank you to Joseph Palazzolo for the beautiful music, to Melanie who did the streaming tonight, to Arthur for the slides, and to all of you. Please join us for the Oneg Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Heaven Shalom Aleichem, Heaven Shalom Aleichem, Heaven Shalom Aleichem, Heaven Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Heaven Shalom Aleichem, Heaven Shalom Aleichem, Heaven Shalom